The Assembly will now take a decision on Draft Resolution A/ES10/L27 entitled Protection of Civilians and Upholding Legal and Humanitarian Obligations. A recorded vote has been requested.
We support speaking out with one voice to condemn Hamas for its terrorist actions on October 7th. Why is that so hard? To say unequivocally that murdering babies and gunning down parents in front of their children is horrific, that burning down houses while families shelter inside and taking civilians hostage is abhorrent. It's why today the United States is proposing an amendment that unequivocally rejects and condemns these atrocities. And we urge all members to vote yes and declare that what happened on October 7th is intolerable, period. This is the bare minimum, and it should not be that difficult.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Mr. President, my delegation voted for draft resolution today in the hope that these tragic circumstances and suffering caused by an inhumane military attack by the occupation Israeli forces stop. As some members of the international community did not support the ceasefire and did not provide sufficient humanitarian assistance, we express our dismay that the Palestinian people are unable to live a dignified life. Once again, we call for a ceasefire to stop the bloodshed, to protect civilians, and to stop the collective punishment inflicted upon the people of Gaza. The current crisis is a result of the failure of the international community to ensure the two-state solution. It allowed Israel to continue working with impunity. This is what led to the current crisis, and this is why we call upon the international community to shoulder its responsibility to immediately stop this war and stop the bloodshed. We stress the need to reach a comprehensive and just solution for the Palestinian question in line with the Arab Peace Initiative, the two-state solution, and the establishment of a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as a capital.
India has voted in favor of the resolution just adopted by the General Assembly. The situation that this august body has been deliberating upon has many dimensions. There is the terrorist attack in Israel on 7 October and the concern for the hostages taken at that time. There is an enormous humanitarian crisis and the large-scale loss of civilian lives, especially of women and children. There is the issue of observing international humanitarian law in all circumstances. And there is the endeavor to find a peaceful and lasting two-state solution to the long-standing Palestine question. Our challenge in this extraordinarily difficult time is to strike the right balance. The gravity and complexity of what the international community faces is underlined by the Secretary-General invoking Article 99 of the Charter of the United Nations. We therefore welcome the fact that the international community has been able to find a common ground to address the multiple challenges facing the region right now.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Mr. President, the situation before us is quite clear. One member state, a permanent member of Security Council, misusing its unequal authority of veto power and in clear disregard to the united will of international community, has decided to stand with Israeli criminal regime and materially enable this regime in its ongoing massacre against civilians in Gaza. The United States blatantly opposing a ceasefire, which means prescribing war, violence, and eventually more death for children and women in Gaza. In conclusion, my delegation has voted in favor of resolution considering the urgency of the situation and a strong need to address the dire humanitarian condition in Palestine, and would like to put on record that our support for the resolution is without prejudice to our long-standing and constant national position on issues related to the question of Palestine and non-recognition of the Israeli regime. Today's vote by the General Assembly is a victory for blood of brave martyrs of the Gaza over the Israelis' war machine, and clearly indicate international will.
We recognize Israel's right to defend itself. In defending itself, Israel must respect international humanitarian law. Civilians and civilian infrastructure must be protected. We are alarmed at the diminishing safe space for civilians in Gaza. The price of defeating Hamas cannot be the continuous suffering of Palestinian civilians. The ongoing humanitarian crisis has weighed heavily in Canada's decision to support this resolution. Canada remains committed to the goal of a comprehensive, a just, and a lasting peace in the Middle East, including the creation of a Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with the state of Israel.
We are pained to acknowledge that throughout all of this time, the collective efforts within the UN did not provide us with a needed result. But the reason for that is not because a multilateral diplomacy is stalling. It has nothing to do with the incapacity of Security Council to do its job, as is being said by many, including today. Let's call a spade a spade. The reason here is that all peacemaking efforts hit a wall in the form of the United States. From the very beginning, the United States have directly rejected multilateral diplomacy. American representatives kept saying that while Washington is conducting quiet diplomacy on the ground, no one should interfere, so as not to impede them. And that is the main reason why the Security Council has not been able, throughout this time, come up with a decisive measure. With this veto, the American side essentially issued a license to kill and now bears full responsibility for each new victim of the conflict in Gaza. And sharing this blame with them is something that other members of Security Council and members of the UN as a whole should not be asked to do. And what comes to my mind is a blockade of Leningrad by the Nazis during World War II. It lasted almost 900 days and resulted in more than 1 million people of Leningrad dying. Is Gaza awaiting the same fate? It is impossible to imagine that something like this is happening nowadays. I thank you.